Alright, welcome back to your favorite art channel that nobody knows. So this time I want to talk about this piece called Remains of a Different Time. Yeah, I hope it will be interesting. So in time you will learn that I love hand sketches, and I'm a firm believer that you should, let's say it's beneficial to plan out what you're doing before you're doing it, and that way you have more freedom once it comes to all the shading and colorization. So as you could see, I cut up a sketch that I did, and I had a few iterations of basically the same structures, and I just picked the ones that I liked the best and went with those. And then I positioned small objects that I drew separately. I sometimes like to do that because if you know the perspective you're going for and you have some practice, you can easily draw separate objects outside the main sketch and then later fit it in there with Photoshop. So also I thought it would be a cool little gimmick to show these two writings of light and shadow, which I like to place in the sketch itself to remind myself where I wanted to put light and where I wanted to put shadow. Sometimes I would even write colored choices in there because obviously the sketch itself does not have shading yet, and nor does it have color. So if I'm going back to the sketch a few days later, I might have forgotten what I wanted the dramatic lighting to look like, or the color. So I sometimes like to make annotations in sketches. So also you see that I kept these sketches really simple. It's really only about the plan, reminding myself what I wanted to do here and dividing the canvas in a way that you get a nice composition. So this piece is really I started out very classical. No lasso selections or anything fancy. I'm basically just painting with a bigger brush and trying to get all the colors in there from the get-go. So I really believe that you should do that. You should make the canvas. You should fill the canvas as soon as possible to have contextual colors going on and to be able to judge what you're doing. Because obviously, if half the canvas is white, you're not going to be able to decide whether the colors you chose are a good choice or not. So I'm going with a slightly textured brush here, and I also have a slight layer organization. So I put on the down layer, I put what's in the back, being the sky. Then comes the middle ground, the back structure, and the ground, I guess. And then in the foreground, I have one or two layers for the other structure, the house and the object, which will be that little glider drone thing. So obviously the story here is that it's about the difference between futuristic and retro architecture, which I think is you could say it's also a difference between organic and tectonic structures. And my plan was to use that glider to communicate a kind of a travel from one world to the other. So there's few things to consider when I think regarding the story of your image, because obviously those kinds of images always have a narrative, And I like to think of something a little more unique than just the tropes that you see everywhere, be it in concept design or traditional illustration. But it's, you know, there are these narratives that you always see. Is the adventurer going out in the world or discovering stuff, and there's nothing wrong with that. But once in a while, I like something more subtle, that has a little more thought behind it than just, oh, I'm going to do another cool environment with a science fiction structure or with a castle or whatever it may be. So yeah, I'm getting the basic feel down of the brush strokes and of the color balance. And yeah, I like to make everything appear as soon as possible, as I explained earlier. And I think what's missing now is a little bit on the back structure, so that entrance, whatever it is, hangar door that you see in the distance, that kind of gives you an idea about the whole size and scale of the thing. Yeah, so once I'm satisfied with the overall look, and I know I will not change major color composition or anything like that, I like to experiment a little bit. So this is that phase now that you see that I did an overlay on the background structure to put in some shiny blue color, and also experimenting with some custom shapes here. There are people that like to use custom shapes in the beginning of whatever they're painting to kind of suggest them a painting. It's not really my thing. I like to have an idea that came just from my mind and not from random spamming of shapes. But it is a legit technique to come up with something if you have problems coming up with ideas. So yeah, I have tried it and I sometimes do it, but usually I have an idea of what I want to do when I start out. So I will not let randomness decide everything in the image or the main composition, basically. So this is now, I needed a shape that gives me some ground structure, because obviously if you try to draw all this ground structure from scratch, it's a huge time sink, and that's something that I see where the custom shapes have a really great use, along with some heavily textured brushes, like this brush I'm trying here for the rocks. Yeah, all these brushes, I did them myself. I sometimes, of course, inspired by other artists, but I believe that you should understand your brush. You should not just take whatever brush you think is cool because a famous artist used it and then, trying to imitate what he's doing. Because, yeah, most of the time, those people experimented a lot and they know why they're using the brush. And it's kind of futile trying to emulate them. At least to me, it feels like that. I might create a brush that is something that I saw Sparth use, or other famous artists. But then I will try to recreate it in my way, and not just download their brush. So yeah, I don't know. Maybe that's just me, but I don't like to use other people's tools that they, kind of made to fit their unique style, because automatically I feel like I'm adapting a little bit of their style through that brush, and I'm not being as original. So here, what I did is I focus on everything that's stone in the foreground and putting a little bit of a shadow of that tree trunk on the side of the house. And also, I'm still not. You saw that, like the big textured stone brushes, I almost kept nothing that they offered me here because I felt it didn't look right. So that's also a thing, that you might have a very elaborate brush that gives you a crazy texture, but that does not mean that you should just put it everywhere. Most of the time, it will just be a little bit here and there, and I will just delete the rest of it to kind of just make me a quick suggestion of the scale aspect of the structure that it gives me, and then I might not use it at all. So this piece, I don't exactly remember how long it took me to do this, but I can spend anywhere from 2 hours up to 5-6 hours on a piece these days. Usually I lose patience after that, and I cannot get anything good before that. So I'm not the fastest guy. There's usually I would not be able to draw something I'm satisfied with under 2 hours, I feel. Because I just like to experiment, and if you're experimenting with shapes and brushes, like half an hour passes like nothing. It's and you're not really further in your image. You just did check some options that you might not at all use eventually. So, but I like to do that because I think that without experimenting, if you just focus on speed, you will not really change your style. You will not really evolve the same way as you would with experimentation. So I did use a custom shape there in the background to create that side panel of the huge science fiction structure, and that's just something that I compiled it, I think, from a photo of some skyscrapers. So what I like to do is I don't just hit the vectorization button on those photos. I like to draw into those selections already and try to optimize it and take little things away so that I have a strongly filtered custom shape eventually that I will that I might be able to use it for multiple purposes. So at this point, I'm just going back and forth and trying to fix what I think needs fixing, like the perspective of those custom shape textures, if you want to call them that. So yeah, those in the foreground look a little bendy, so I have to just fix them through the transformation tool quickly. Yeah, also I put some blending on them while locking down the layer, so that's what gave me the bright blue reflection from the sky on these custom shape panels. So those could be anything from windows to second, like other material applications, and it's not really, I think, always necessary to be that concrete about it and to be and explain everything, especially not in fantasy and sci-fi. You want some I don't know, ominosity, is that a word? Like some what could you say? Some mysticality to it, so that you don't really everything doesn't need to be so explicit, I feel. So finally, going back to those stones, rock formations in the foreground, trying to make those better. For some reason, I struggled with those and I did this a while back, so maybe I'm not now explaining it, but I did it more than half a year ago, so I don't remember why I struggled that hard. sometimes it's just like that. Some things come to you naturally, and then in another piece, similar things you don't, for some reason, feel as comfortable. And I think it's normal. It should not really stress you out too much. I think it happens to everyone. I heard other people, other artists talk about that, all this, you need to have a good day sometimes, or sometimes you're having a bad day and stuff just doesn't come out, and there's nothing you can do in the moment. Maybe get yourself distracted and come back later is what works for me most of the time. But that's, I think, is highly personal. So looking back at this, I think the mistake I made there in the past few minutes was that I was on my small brush trying to fix some insertions on the rocks, but really I needed a bigger brush to have to work on the bigger shapes a little bit more, and have some basic better structures in those rocks. So now I decide that that shadow line, I want to diffuse it a little bit, for it not to, because there's obviously nothing casting that shadow on this huge structure. Therefore I need to remodel it as a cloud shadow to get away with it. I shouldn't say there couldn't be anything, because maybe there's an even bigger tower to the left, so we don't know that, but it is unlikely. So I really just want to use that shadow on the side of the structure to put more contrast for the right side of the house in the foreground, to have it stick out more. And if you're drawing something that is outside, under a natural sky, you can get away with a lot of stuff, because it could be, even though the sky you're showing is clear, it could be cloudy on the other side. That's very hard to, it's impossible to know. But of course, within the image, you're setting up an expectation for the viewer. So if your sky, I would say, is too clear, then it would be weird to have cloud shadows, obviously, because people might just not agree with it. It might be possible in reality, but that's not helping you if people don't feel that, Yeah, I think I want it to be done here, because usually I only will go to a really small brush if I feel that the rest of the detail is here and is already consistent enough. But I think I will go back on the ground in a second, and also on the object, the glider, and try to improve that. I, for some reason, just was not feeling the way that the house and the natural stone was looking, and it's just now looking better to me and making a little bit more sense. So in this case, I sometimes get obsessed a little bit with fixing something, and I will spend too much time on it, but usually it will come out better than it was before. So I would say it's not ideal, but it's better than being stuck and not doing anything. Really interesting watching that with some distance. Yeah, not the most efficient I've been, for sure. But I do still like the image, and I do still like the idea. It's so funny, because if you let half a year or only 3 months pass after you did something, chances are if you evolve during that time, you already have a different perspective, and you already would do it in a different way. And I think that's good. That proves that you're not you're not stalling in progress. You're evolving. And sometimes also you look back and say, "Damn, how did I do this? I don't even remember," and it might be even hard to recreate it in a positive way. And yeah, of course, if you analyze something like this video, if you happen to record yourself while working, then you can recreate it and you can analyze it and understand how you did it. But and it doesn't happen a lot to me, but it's certainly a thing. If you do a lot of experimentation, there will be some combinations of layer effects or of custom shape and brushes and clipping masks that you don't exactly remember after a while. So right now I want to give this glider more pop and really have a kind of a contrast that represents a more artificial material like metal or plastic or a shiny material. Also, obviously, the object needs to influence the surrounding area in a way, so I decided to go for like a dust trail here, which I think works fairly well. Would maybe could have used some more opacity, but in the moment I think I tend to like subtle things more. Just checking if I want this to be more like the sky color like it initially was, or more like the ground color. So now I'm experimenting with something with a little bit more opacity and a little bit more shape to it, and I think that's what I end up using, a combination. Those effects I recommend to do them quick and have an outcome very quickly, so that you can really judge, oh, is this what I like? Because there's so many ways to do effects or blendings in Photoshop that you should be able to find a way to do it fast, and that's why I tend to do them. I rather do them fast and do them 2-3 times over again and then see which take was the best, than to just think that I can really paint it very detailed or very intricately. So I will go for something for a fast effect usually. If that is a color dodge layer or just a smudge tool or whatever. So this is a color dodge layer now that we see. I wanted to put some lighting on there and it looks really cool. Problem is that if it's too distinct, then it might not make sense. So that's, I think, what I thought here. So I'm toning it down a little bit to have just like little light rays hitting that surface. And color dodge is also good to just give some, might I call it, dynamic light to surfaces, and it gives you sometimes a result that you did not expect, which I consider to be a good thing. If you just blend with a normal layer, you can of course do that, and or you could select pieces of the canvas like with a lasso tool and just pull up the contrast, stuff like that. However you do it, it's up to you, I feel, but I think it's good to at one time try all those options and see what you like best. Yeah, so putting some final insertions on that building, just to give basically the illusion of it, of architectural structure, I would say, because it's unlikely that a huge building is just a homogeneous block. It would not be like that in reality. You would see some traces even from a distance of how the thing was built and how it holds together, and where there's insertions in the material. Of course, if you overdo that, then it loses its scale. That's the drawback. So you have to be really careful to not just spam it with insertions or with lines. That way you will lose the sense of grandeur, I think. So happy with that layer that gave the whole thing a little bit more pop, a little bit more color, more contrast. I don't know what that was supposed to be, but I think I don't keep it. That pole that I just put. I don't even remember putting it, to be honest with you. So yeah, that's some more structures, make it a little bit more interesting and practical, I guess. I sometimes struggle with having something that is really rough but looks really good and really promising, and then taking it to the next level, because I feel like it's so easy to destroy it. And I think that's what happened with the house. I liked pieces of it from the beginning, and then struggled a little bit to put more detail without destroying what was good about it in the first place. Back to the rocks again. I wonder when this will end, because we're almost done with the video. Yeah, that was a good idea to have this little stone ornament there. It's like an inscription on the side. So that stuff is really cool, and I could manage to come up with everything in this image from the top of my head, so there's no ref, nothing like that, just really from imagination, everything. So when I can do that, I'm usually pretty happy with myself, because I really feel like I digested all these impressions and put them into a new piece. And that way, those pieces, you can almost be certain that you will not find anything similar on the internet, because all the similar stuff is people quoting each other and people having the same tropey idea, basically, that they love, and they just reinterpret it. And that's how you get a million fantasy drawings or science fiction drawings that basically all look the same. So I'm trying to stay away from it as much as possible, because it's so easy to fall into that. And of course also sometimes necessary, depending on the industry you're working in. Overall, yeah, I think I could go back to this, do it a little bit more detailed, but overall I'm still pretty happy with it. So you can't always think, I should fix everything in afterwards. Then you will just never end going back to your images and quote unquote fixing them, which I don't even think is true. A lot of times you're just making things different and you're not fixing anything. I think when the image is done, you should really not go back to it. So anyways, thanks for watching, and yeah, see you next time.